Shalom, brothers and sisters. This is your sister, Sarah Shemaya, and I just want to take a time and share a little bit of an update of where I am with my Write the Torah journey. I want to just encourage those of you who are participating in the Write the Torah challenge that please share with the group where you are, what you're doing, and give us a video, give us some pictures of your Write the Torah journal showing us how well you're faring with doing this. It is such a blessing, and that's why I wanted to do this video today, because I wanted to kind of share with you what I came across and what I was meditating on, having written it. Then I read it, I'm learning from it, I'm going to live it and love it, and then of course now share it. So I wanted to do that because I yesterday came to you telling you that I was up to chapter 4, was going to begin chapter 4 of Genesis, and I had a goal of at least 10 verses, but I was ultimately going to try to do 15, and guess what? I did 20 verses, so I'm so excited about that. I am up to verse 20 of chapter 4 of Genesis, having just started last week, and I am going to continue with my goal of 10 verses minimum per day. And you know, it can be done a couple of different ways. For those of you who are like 10 verses, that could be a lot. It could be, depending on the size of those verses, but you could do 5 in the morning, 5 in the afternoon. You can do 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, and the other 4 in the evening. You know, you can kind of mix it up a little bit and really make it work for you. So that's what I've been doing, and I can't say I'm sitting down and doing them all at one time. I just do them when I have the time to do them. Okay, so with that said, what I'd like to do today is I want to just share with you something that I've chewed on this before, and at the same time saw some things in there that I thought this might be good to share with the group, and for those of you who actually watch us, my husband Yael, aka Talmud Kurt Todd, watch our YouTube channel, wanted to go ahead and just share what I've been looking at and what I've been chewing on. So with that said, let's look at chapter 4 of Genesis, and I'm going to begin reading at verse 3. It says, "In the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto Jehovah." Verse 4, "And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And Jehovah had respect unto Abel and to his offering." Sorry about that. "But unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And Jehovah said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth, and why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shall thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him." And I'm going to stop there. There are some other scriptures that I do want to go back and address. I want to address later on in this same chapter. But for now, I want to just kind of lay some groundwork here and kind of dig into a couple of verses here. First of all, we know this is the story of Cain and Abel, the sons of Adam and Eve. And we know at this particular point, this is where Cain and Abel are making an offering unto Jehovah. Now, the offerings are made, and clearly Jehovah accepts one and he rejects the other. But the question is why? And if you look at it right there in the text, for me, I think this is the reason why. I've heard other reasons, but I'm just going to give you my spin on it, my take on it, and you may or may not agree, and that's fine. Feel free to share, your thoughts in the comment section. I'm always interested in hearing. Please and if you do, and you have any scriptures, be sure to go ahead and to supply those as well. So if you look at verse 3 and what we read here, it says that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto Jehovah. And then it says Abel, he also brought of the the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And Jehovah had respect unto Abel and to his offering. Okay, so now what are the differences? Well, if you look at Cain, it says he brought fruit. But if you look at Abel, it says he brought the firstlings and the fat thereof. So one brother brings fruit. He went in his garden, he picked some fruit, he put it in a basket, let's just say, and he brought it to the Most High. Whereas the other brother, he went and he was very specific about what he brought. He brought the fat, the firstlings, and he brought the fat. He brought the biggest, he brought the fattest, he brought the best of his flock to Jehovah. He took time. In other words, he didn't bring God any old thing. He brought the Most High something that the Most High could work with. Okay, so this is what I believe is the difference between the two. And I said, I'm joking when I say he brought something that the Most High could work with. He brought something that was pleasing to the Most High. He recognized that you just didn't go and you pulled out some fruit and said, here. And that fruit could have been big, small, fresh or rotten, who knows? But it definitely wasn't. We don't see where there is any adjectives to describe that there was anything specific about his offering. Okay, so now we go on and we see in verse 5 that, Cain's offering is rejected. And it says that in verse 5, I love this, it says, and Cain was very wroth and his countenance fell. And it makes me think of when I was a kid and my mother would be like, girl, I know you don't have your face turned up at me. And I'm like, no, don't. But, it's that's the reaction. It's kind of like he's his face is upset because he's upset and he's showing it. He's expressing how he feels. He's angry. That's what wrath means. And Jehovah said in verse 6 unto Cain, why art thou wroth? Why are you angry? And why is thy countenance fallen? And here is the key verse I want to kind of zoom in on for a moment. It says in verse 7, if thou doest well, shall thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. And unto thee shall thou be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. Now, let me take a moment, if I can, and read that in one of my favorite translations. It's one of my favorite in fact, it's the only modern day translation that I choose to use because I really do find it does a very good job at giving us in modern words what many times scriptures mean. And that's the New Living Translation. Verse 7 says this, you will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master. So now let's think about that for a minute. First of all, I am Hebrew, and as a Hebrew, having also been a former Christian, there is a difference in the way I see certain things now as a Hebrew versus a Christian. In Christendom, we were often taught that sin is in you, and that came as a result of the fall of Adam, that sin is in us. We can't help but sin, okay? That we can't help but do what we do, that we're ever going to be sinning and we can't help it, okay? But I really think that this particular passage of scripture really just challenges that whole idea. As a Hebrew, I believe that sin is a choice. Okay, so let's kind of look at what we have here and what's being said, because another thing that we were taught in Christendom is that sin is in you. But if you look at what the Most High says here, he didn't say sin was in him. He said sin is at the door. So what door is it talking us is the Most High talking about? And again, this is just my take on it. I really believe he's talking about the door of our hearts, the door of our minds, the door of our eyes, our ears, our mouths, that the door is access to us. Sin is waiting to get access to us based on the choices that we make. So let's just think about that. Let me kind of dig into that a little bit. Think about this, that we are already after the fall in the garden. So he's giving Cain this instruction after the fall. But more importantly, or equally important, is that he's also giving him this instruction before Cain does what he does next, which, as we know, is kill his brother. So what is so pivotal about this particular passage of scripture is that I think that the Most High is saying to Cain, before you do something that you will regret, you need to make a choice. And if you do the right thing, if you make the right choice, you'll be accepted. If you had made the right choice before, when you were picking out that fruit, I would have accepted it. So here's the thing. I know you're angry. I know you're upset. But before you go and do something, I think you need to stop and think about what you're about to do, because if you don't, sin. Now you say, well, what is sin? Satan, that evil influence, that evil inclination is sitting there. It's waiting. It's looking for the opportunity based on the choice that you make to leap on you. Whether it's coming through your own words and what you say, it comes into your hearing and what you hear. And then because of what you hear, you take that in and you begin to make wrong decisions. What you carry out, what you do, what's in your heart, what's in your mind. Sin is looking for an access point. But here's the more important part, is what he says after he tells him this. He says here in verse 7, he says, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. So I believe what he's saying is that based on what you do, sin will have control over you, or you will have control over it. It is a choice. And that's what I think is really phenomenal about this. Another thing we learned, or I learned as a Christian, was that the choice is yours because, well, after all, you know what? You can't help yourself. You can't help but sin. So you did what is in your nature to do. And this is why we need Jesus, because he offers us something that they didn't have in the Old Testament, and that's grace and mercy. And I so beg to differ, because I think that's what we see right here. Grace and mercy was available at that time. The Most High was giving out grace and mercy from the very foundation of the earth. He was extending grace and mercy. We saw him give it to Adam and Eve. And now we see it here. And I think we see it here more clearly because there is such an important thing that happened. Now, some will say, well, you know what? There was no law, thou shalt not kill. So he didn't break any law. Well, he obviously did something wrong. And that something that was done wrong cost him or created a penalty, a consequence. So let's look at that a little bit more. And we're going to jump down a little bit here to, let's look at verse 11. And now art thou, verse 10. And Jehovah said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shall thou be in the earth. And Cain said unto Jehovah, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, verse 14, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me. And Jehovah said unto him, therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And Jehovah set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. So what is that we are seeing here? That there was a curse that came upon Cain from the earth because of the blood spill, the innocent blood of his brother. And Cain cries out, you put something on me that I cannot handle. This is big. I can't take on this consequence for my action. And he says, you know what? He said, I'm going to tell you what. He said, I'm going to go ahead and show you some mercy. I'm going to go ahead and give you some grace. And that mercy and that grace was that he put a mark on him to protect him from those who would seek to kill him. But here's something that's very important for those of you who are saying, but there was no law. There was no law. But guess what? Go back to verse 7. And what do we see in verse 7? We see a key word here. And the word we see is sin. Sin is present, even though the law was not. The law wasn't present as in to say God said, thou shalt not kill. But sin was present. What does that mean? That means that the wrong, to do wrong, there was wrong in the midst. There was the right and there was the wrong. And that was right there in the midst of them. And I believe that was in the midst of them right there in the garden. Because what do we find in the garden? We found the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so that tree of knowledge of good and evil was sin, or right and wrong, present. That balance was right there. And when we get down the road and we're hearing the story with Cain and Abel, we find Cain is presented with the Most High, indicating to him, you're angry, you're upset. Well, here, let me tell you something, dear son. You have a choice to make. You can either do what's right or you can do what's wrong. But if you choose wrong over right, sin, that evil is present. It was present in the garden, because the garden has ceased to have, you cease to have access to the garden doesn't mean that the balance of that tree, that knowledge of good and evil, doesn't still have access to mankind. It's still in the midst. But you can have power, dominion over it by the choices that you make. Now, does that mean that we always make the right choices? No, we don't. We sometimes make the wrong choice. But I'll tell you something. The thought of I cannot make the right choice because sin is in me leaves a person feeling and thinking, I can't help what I do. It robs you of accountability. But if you know that sin is there, it's around you, it's a choice that you can make, you might fight harder knowing that you can make a choice and have power over sin versus the idea, I can't help myself, so why bother? See, that's the difference between the doctrine that we find in many circles in Christian teaching. And I don't want to say every circle, because I'm sure there are some Christians out there who don't necessarily give to that. And they may see what I'm saying and support it. But the teachings, the way Paul comes across, he almost teaches that I can't help it. Go read Romans chapter 7. You know, I can't help it. It is what it is. It's in me, and it is. And so I just give myself over to it. When it happens, it does happen. And when it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I'm just trying to do the best that I can. But don't you think that many times, and I can honestly say I've been guilty of it. There was times when I gave myself over to sin because of the idea that I can't help myself. It just is what it is. It's in me. So, you know, thank God for the grace of Jesus. That's what we used to say. But if I had the idea, or someone had taught me and said to me, sin is a choice. It's not in you, it's around you. But it can get in you and have dominion over you if you choose to continue to give yourself over to it. You make the choice. Do you want to do what's right, or do you want to do what's wrong? It's up to you. And that for me has been really so amazing, because does that mean I've done everything perfect and failed and haven't failed? I would not say that to you. But what I will say is I feel the strength of the Most High helping me to make the right choices more now than I ever have before, because I realize that I am accountable for my actions. And that the Most High's grace and mercy is still in effect and still right there helping me along the way. But that the decision to do what's right or wrong is mine and mine alone. And so I want to leave you with what I've shared. I guess hopefully will bless somebody today. And of course you may disagree, and that's okay, you know. But I am pursuing with all my heart to live according to the precepts and the instructions of the Most High, and I hope you are too. And for those of you who may be interested in joining our Write the Torah challenge, please feel free to click on at the bottom the link that'll take you to our Facebook group, the page for our Facebook group, and you can go there and you can sign up and you can become a part of this wonderful journey that each one of us are taking. There is no specific time when you have to join. You just jump in, get your notebooks, get your Torah out, and start writing in your notebooks the Torah. And you know, when you go to our page, please, you know, just take the moment to read our description and And then, join us with the comments and give us the updates of what you're doing when you're writing the Torah and what you're learning, because that is the motto of our group. And that is to write it, read it, learn it, live it, love it, and then share it. Right on, Torah scribes. And for those of you who are just joining us on our YouTube channel, we just bless and thank the Most High for you. Shalom.